Hello. This is a quick tutorial that reviews what we went over in the computer lab last week. We'll learn to set up Logic Pro, to import audio files, edit the audio files, apply fades, and select a time range to export to an audio file. Open Logic by double-clicking the application. If it's down here in the dock, you can just single-click it, and that'll open it. What I meant by double-click is if you're in a Finder window and you select Applications, you can go down to the program and double-click on it there. Another way to open programs is if you go to the dock and go to Launchpad, then you can use two fingers to swipe between the screens, and you can find Logic from these up here. There's Logic. And to get out of that, you can click on Launchpad. And I think the easiest way to open a piece of software is to click on the spotlight magnifying glass up here and then just start typing. So I type LOG, there it already is. Then you can use the arrow keys to go up and down, or just click on Logic Pro X, and that opens the software. If the software is already open, it'll just give focus to that piece of software. You can tell what software has focus because it's up. The name of the software is right up next to the apple in the upper left corner of your screen. So this Finder window here, I went to Applications. You can use these two arrow keys to go back. And this is my day 3 version 2. This has the MP3 audio files that we recorded during the first class. Let's see. So once Logic is open and has focus, so let's do that again. You can hit Command Spacebar to open up Spotlight. Again, just start typing Logic. It's already there, and hit Return, and that gives focus to that application. Now my Logic Pro isn't set up to give you any kind of prompt at the beginning. You can change that under Preferences. So if we go down to Preferences, General, it'll ask you on Startup Action, I choose Do Nothing, but you can also do Open an Existing Project, Open a New Project from Template, etc., or Ask, and that's where you would set that. So we're going to actually click on File and say New from Template, or just New. Sorry, I have some templates in here, but until you get a template, you'll just need to do a new empty one. Or I think you could do the blank template. Let's see what that one looks like. I'll hit cancel through these. Let's see, New from Template. There's My Templates, but there's also New Projects, and this is what you normally see. Once you've saved your own templates, they show up under My Templates, and there's also a list of recent templates. So we'll choose an empty project, and then it's going to ask you to put a track in. You have to choose a track. Software instruments are when you want to play the keyboards and built-in sounds. External MIDI is if you want to play external sounds with the MIDI that's in Logic. Guitar or bass is a specialized channel that you can plug your guitar or bass into, and it emulates an amplifier. And drummer is a special software instrument track that allows you to have a drummer that plays along with the tracks. You don't need any of those. We're just going to work with audio in this class. You can choose which input. You can see on this, what is this, a DM4800, there's 32 channels that I can record into. And then the output will generally just be the first 2 channels, but this also has 32 outputs of channels. So if you're choosing multiple at the same time under number of tracks, then you can choose ascending here, and it'll do input 1, input 2, input 3 for each of the channels. You can have a default patch or open the library if you have a specific set of EQs or compressors, or in the case of a software instrument, if you have a certain instrument that you've set up, it can pull that up automatically. And you can choose your input and output device here. And when I clicked on that, it went right to Settings and allows me to go on the Audio tab, Devices tab. The output device is set up to this Tascam mixer that I have in front of me. Anyways, long story short, just create, here I'll close this, create an audio track, and we just want one. We do want it to be stereo, so you could either choose input 1 and 2 here to force it to be stereo, or you can change that after the fact, and I'll show you where to change that now. Here's the one track up here, and up here in the upper left is the inspector. window. That's a window pane, so that opens and closes that pane. The library pane is here. You could have both of those open at the same time. We generally will not be using the library. So the inspector window is here. That allows you to see the region inspector, the track inspector, and the mixer track here. You can see the input 1, 2 is there. If we wanted to change that, you can click, hold, and find a different input that you want to use. Or if you want to feed it from a bus, if you were using an aux bus. We don't get into those. Those are great for reverb though. There's an EQ slot here that you can add EQ. There's other audio effects here that you can add all sorts of processing to the sound. There's sends that you can use for aux sends, and then the output here is the stereo out. We'll generally choose stereo out because that's how we hear it. If you needed to change from stereo to mono, you can click on the little thing I just clicked on and choose mono here. And then now that's one channel. If you're stereo, you're 2 channels. And you'll see that this gets a little wider so that you have meters for both channels. So that's how you create the track. Let's see, I'm just looking at my notes. Okay, so I wanted to go over the different window panes. This is library, this is the inspector. This pane here will open up some more tools, and if you want even more tools, you can right click on one of the gray spots between icons and click on Customize Toolbar, and then you can add, say, bounce, or if you know you don't need some of these or you want to add some of those, you could. If I had to go through, I'd say bounce is good, import audio is good, probably don't need note repeat or spot erase. Those splits are nice. Don't really need join. Bounce regions we won't really need. Let's see, move to track, move to playhead. I like move to playhead. You don't need nudge. Let's see, lock SMPTE we won't need to use. That's for when you have tempos that change. If you're using MIDI, we're not going to use MIDI. We don't really need any of these. Marker, set locators. Zoom is nice to have, and colors is nice. Okay, great. And we could save that as the default. On the Computer Lab computers, though, you'll have to reset it every time you do it. But that's how the settings go. And now you can see I've got a bounce button here. I've got an import audio button, track zoom. Track zoom, see, made the track larger. And so those are those buttons here, and those open up with the little drawer button here. There's a little question mark that does the quick help. So anything that you mouse over, it will say what it is you're looking at. So here's the mute button, here's the solo button, and it tells you a little bit about each button. So you can leave that on unless it's in your way, and it helps you learn about what's in the software. This is Smart Controls. It'll open up a little tab at the bottom. We won't be using that. The second one changes the bottom tab, and this is the mixer, and you can see here's the audio track that we created, and then the audio track we created goes output through the stereo out, and then the stereo out is controlled via the master bus. So you always want the master to be at 0, and you always want the stereo to be at 0. And for everything we're doing, we can probably even leave this at 0 and just normalize on the bounce out. And that'll make it so that the loudest part of your program is going to be all ones, or digital 0 dB FS. Continuing with the windows, we can close the mixer. This is the file editor. If you double click a region, it will automatically open this file editor, and there's a way to do it via track as well as via individual audio files. That's kind of a power user view. It's very powerful, but we won't need to use that. And then all of the buttons from here, where the transport begins, to the end here where this click is, are all configurable. You'll want to go in here and choose Custom. And then when you right click on anywhere that's gray in between, you'll see Customize Control Bar and Display. And you can choose views over here. Here you can see I have the library. If I get rid of it, the library disappears. And all of the stuff up here is all configurable by what you want here. Go to the beginning is nice. Go to left locator or right locator is nice. We'll leave those in there. I always like to have pause because sometimes you leave pause on and you don't realize it if you hit it on accident. Capture recording is if you're doing MIDI recordings. We won't be using that. Position is nice. Locators you don't need because it gives it to you in bars and we want to work in time. Sample rate is good to have. Varispeed, just to verify that it's off. That you can play your project at various speeds. Let's see, tempo we can get rid of. We don't use key signatures or time signatures or MIDI activity, and it's nice to see your load meters. Then under modes and functions, we have cycle, replace. We don't need replace. We do need cycle. I like to have software monitoring on. Let's see. Set left right locator by playhead. We don't need the tuner. Solo is nice to have so you can see that you're not soloing stuff. And it is nice to have click available there and count in just so that you can click them off. And we don't want master volume because we don't need to change that. So now if I hit save as default and hit OK, these will come up every time now for a new project. And it looks like my board is set to 96K. So I'm going to set this project to 96K. And what I'm setting is the sample rate, and you saw Core Audio opened up quickly. If I hit Command, comma, it'll open the preferences again, and I can see that I'm connected to this device under Core Audio, so that 96K affects that. If you click on the General tab, which I thought I'd clicked on, there it is. You can choose your recording file type. Generally, CAF is fine if you're recording directly in. For our class, we're actually recording using the Tascam DR05's recorders, and we'll just import the files when we're done. I'm going to show you how to do that next. I/O assignments, you'll just want to verify that your output is going to what you're listening to. And in this case, this is correct. You'll also just want to double check that on the Advanced tab that all of these options are enabled. Otherwise, you won't have all the functionality of Logic. It kind of turns it into GarageBand, and I don't see why we would need that. Okay, so we fixed all these buttons up here. There's more buttons over here on the right. Let me show you those. The first one opens up this window pane here. It has an Event tab, a Marker tab, a Tempo tab, and a Signature tab. Key signature. So we're not using tempo or key signature. I use markers with the workflow I'm going to show you. You don't need to use it. And events will just list every region of audio that you put in there. There's a notepad. You can take notes for the entire project or notes for just the one track. So that's nice to give yourself notes about maybe where you set the microphone preamplifier levels. This is Apple Loops, and this will be where you can insert MIDI tracks that are already pre-recorded if you need like a conga line to put under something, and then you'd be into MIDI and software instruments at that point. There's also browsers. This one we're going to be using, the project browser, allows you to see the audio files that we're going to use for this. And there's also media and all files, and you don't need to use either of those. So we will be concerned with this tab though. Whoops, there we go. And with these four buttons and these buttons up here, you can open and close all of the tabs and kind of take over your window space. And then if you want to get that space back, you can just close those all. It moves the smart controls as well. Oh, or go to Mixer. There we go. Okay, so that was settings and windows and panes. And now we're going to import audio files into Logic. So there's two different ways you can do this. You can, I just hit Command Tab to switch over to the Finder, or if you hit Command Shift Tab, it goes backwards. And go to the little blue man, and then these are the MP3 files that I want to insert. You can just select them. I took 3 fingers to lasso them, and if you grab them by the icon here, you can drag them right into Logic and see how there's a little plus and it'll change the position. If you need to move over we can do that. Okay, great. And by dropping them, it asks me the question, add selected files to arrange. You can either create new tracks, use the existing tracks, or place all files on one track. And generally we'll want to place all files on one track. And you can see it's doing the sample rate conversion for those files. And now they're all in here. So one setting we didn't change yet is under project settings. So if you go File, Project Settings, and I believe it's under the General tab, the first setting there is Use Musical Grid. And if we turn that off, you'll notice that this changed from bars and beats, see this is bar 1, bar 2, bar 3, to time, and that's in minutes. There'll always be a 1 at the beginning there. They do that so that it syncs up with video. If you start at 0 and then go before it, it becomes the day before and it gets a little confused. So they always just start an hour in. And then these are minutes and these are seconds. So then we can close the project settings. Although I'll note that project settings under audio is where you can choose your sample rate, and that's 96 kilohertz here. You can also choose it up here because I made that available. So to zoom, if you have one of these Apple trackpads, you can use 2 fingers to shrink or to grow the interface. So that's one way to go. And then if you're zoomed in, you can also use 2 fingers back and forth to move through the audio. So that's a real quick way to get through the audio here. So again, that's shrinking and zooming. If you don't have a fancy mouse like this, you can go up here to the upper right, and this is the horizontal zoom, and this is the vertical zoom. So horizontal zoom, if you drag this slider, and I'm 3-finger dragging it, that's a setting under System Preferences. So if I wanted to open System Preferences, I'd hit Command Space, start typing in System Preferences, open up the trackpad, and here's all your options for the trackpad. So you can certainly look through here and see how everything is set up. There's a lot of different options, and you can tell I use them all. And you can change the speed there. So that's just where that setting is. Now to switch back to Logic, I can either hit Command Tab to switch back that way, or just click on it in the background. So horizontal zooming, like this or this, and then vertical zooming will make the track taller, or you can click this auto vertical zoom button, vertical auto zoom, and it fills the screen. And then the next button over, if you click drag on, you can increase or decrease the waveform with a little slider. And once you get it set to where you like it, you can also click it off or click it back on. And that helps you see the waveforms a little better. So that's how to navigate. And then if I wanted to say cut this audio here, I'd click up here, and there's 2 parts. There's the part here where it's an arrow, and as you go down it turns into the double arrow. If you click where the double arrow is, it'll move the playhead there, and the playhead's where it's going to begin to play. If I click on play here, it begins to play. And you can hit stop here. So if I want to zoom into this area, I can use 2 fingers. Whoops. Now it's actually zooming into the beginning of the region because I have region selected. So if I click off the region and then use the 2 fingers, it'll zoom in on the playhead. And I'll want to choose the beginning part here. We'll hit play. Alright, and what I like to do is zoom in until I can see seconds. So there's 1 hour, 2 minutes, and 47 seconds, and there's 2 minutes and 50 seconds. So I'd want to zoom in a little farther until I see 48 seconds, 49 seconds. And then I'll go 1 second before the music starts and make a cut right there. And I believe I have a tool here. Let's see, this is split by playhead. Oh, you have to select it first, and then you can click on split by playhead, and it made it into 2 different regions. So now if I zoom out from that area, I can see there's the cut, and I can delete the beginning of that region. I just click on it and then press the delete key. So now if I hit the space bar to do play, that's a keyboard shortcut, same as hitting play up here. You can also zoom in with a keyboard shortcut. I have the front arrow. And we'll stop it and put a cut right there as well. So we'll do split by playhead, and then we can delete this one as well. So here's an edited region, and that begins and ends where we would like it to. Instead of using this tool in the drawer, you could also have used this tool here. There's two tool choosers. This is the regular tool, which I usually leave as pointer, and this is the command tool. So when you hold down the command key on the keyboard, you can move the mouse around and use one of these other tools. The scissors tool is great. I'm going to undo cutting that, and I can just move the scissors where I want them and click while holding command, and that does the same thing as split by playhead, but it's wherever I want to cut. So I could cut it in a bunch of spots. And I can easily undo that by holding down command and tapping Z. And again, I'll click on this and delete it. So now that we have that edited, I'm going to show you how to fade. It's real simple when you're using regions. You hold down Control and Shift, and if you move the mouse over the beginning of the region, you'll see it change, and you'll want to do this up towards the top of the region. And then you drag while holding down Control Shift as far as you want that first fade to happen. And you can do the same on the end. Hold down Control Shift and then click drag at the end to make your fade ins. So if I start it here, hit the space bar, it does the fade in, click here to move ahead, and it does the fade out. Another way to write those fades, I'm going to undo those, is to open up the inspector, click off the region, select the region that you want to apply the fades to. This is actually useful because you can do more than one region at the same time. And if I click in the region inspector and I open up the More tab, I can see there's fade in and fade out. So if I double click on fade in, you got to find it. Where is it? Or is it just single click? There it is. I can type in the number of milliseconds that I want the fade to last. So maybe I want this to be 600 milliseconds or a little under a second. And then I can do the same for fade out. Where is it now? My mouse is a little, it's not on a hard surface, so I'm having to click it a little harder. And for the fade out, I could enter 1000 milliseconds, and I'm just pressing enter to make it actually occur. So there's another way to do fade in and out. You can also create curves with this. If I wanted to, let me click harder, sorry. There we go. You could enter in 10 and you'll see how that curves this. You can also use the Control Shift to change the mouse type again, and you can create your curves there. And you'll see as I'm moving it that it's changing over here in the inspector. You can do the same here for the curve on the fade in. And you can change the length of the fade in as well, or the length of the fade out by grabbing the handle while holding Control Shift. Okay, that's how to do fades. Now we're going to select a time range to export. So remember, you click on the lower half of the time bar in order to move the playhead. If you click drag in the upper half, you create a cycle. And I usually like to make the cycle a few seconds longer than the region. And you want to make sure it begins either before or right on where the region begins. And it looks like this is exactly where the region begins. And then the output here is right there. Then if I hit play, no matter where I put the playhead, when I hit play, it's going to start at the beginning of the region. And if I click towards the end, we'll get the fade out. And then the end of the file will have a little bit of digital silence. I'm going to hit stop. Cycle mode will just continue to play over and over again. You can enable it or disable it with the cycle mode button, or by mousing over it, and if you go to the center of the cycle range and you click on it, it'll turn into a hand, and that can enable or disable cycle mode. If you want to move the ends, move the mouse to the end and the cursor will change, and then you can drag the end or beginning exactly where you want them. So that's how you select the time range to export. And then to export audio files, again, we can go to the drawer and we have a button called Bounce, and it says Bounce mixes audio file to disk. That's also available under File, Bounce, and Project or Section. So those are both going to give you the same dialog. I'll click right here, and it opens up this Bounce dialog. So let me walk you through the Bounce dialog. It's going to bounce a file that's 14 seconds long, and you can see that's the time range that I've selected up here. We're going to get a PCM style file. You can also create an MP3 file by clicking on the check here. Or if you wanted to burn this single track to a CD, you could use this option. Or if you were trying to create AAC files, which is similar to MP3, it's a lossy compression file. This is what iTunes does by default. You could do that. We're generally only going to use PCM waves and MP3s. MP3s will always want to verify that the bitrate stereo is as high as it can go, which is 320 kilobytes per second. You don't need to use variable bitrate encoding. Always choose use best encoding, and always choose filter frequencies below 10 Hertz. That will be on by default anyways. And then the stereo mode is going to be joint stereo or normal. It'll both work. I don't think that matters. I'm not that good a teacher, am I? Anyways, then you'll always want to choose normalize on, at least for this class. And what that'll do is make it so you don't have to use the processing in the tracks or in the region to increase the gain. You'll always just increase the loudest portion of this 14 seconds to digital 0 or 0 dB full scale, or all ones. And that'll just make it as loud. And that's nice when you're comparing different tracks for a final project, because you'll hear them all at a relatively the same volume. Under PCM, this normalize will still stay on, and file format will choose WAV. And then if we're going to create CDs from this, we'll always want to lower the resolution to 16-bit and lower the sample rate to 44.1. File type is always going to be interleaved. Split would be if you were sending these files to Pro Tools. And dithering, do we want that on or off? We want it on. And that's because we're going from 24-bit recording to 16-bit recording. So whenever we go from a higher bit depth to a lower bit depth, we want to add dither. They give you some different choices for dither. The first one you can't go wrong with. It's just straight dither. UV22HR is also an excellent dither, so we'll go ahead and choose that one. So this is going to export this 14 seconds, and it's going to create an MP3 file with the high bit rate, and it's going to create a CD quality wave, and it's going to normalize both of those. So we can hit OK. Also, just to note, you will want it to be offline, and you don't need to include the audio tail. That's part of the reason we leave this extra cycle at the end. So I'll go ahead and hit OK and let that do that. It's going to ask you for where you want to save this, and I think I'll just hit Command Tab to go back to my Finder window, and I'd like to save it here. So what I can do is just drag one of these files into this, and it'll automatically navigate to that folder. It's actually in Downloads, and it'll allow me to give it a name. So I'll just call this Class Export. And then I hit Enter to hit Bounce, and you can see it really quickly bounce those 14 seconds out. Now if I go back to the Finder window, I can see there's my class export file. Here, I'll sort them by date. And there's the MP3, and there's the WAV. So I can play the MP3 by just pressing spacebar. It has the fade in and the fade out, and it's very loud now because I normalized it. You'll see the size of this file is very small in comparison to the size of the WAV file. And the WAV file sounds better, but difficult to hear because the recording quality isn't amazing. So let's see, did I do everything? Yes, that's everything. Then you can save your project. If you select Save As, then you can choose from all of these options here. I generally organize the projects as folders. Packages keeps everything in one file. Folder will make its own folder. I'm going to just put this in the Logic bit here. Or actually, let's put it in the other folder. So if I go here and drag one of these in, it's going to navigate here automatically, and I can go ahead and give it a name. I hit Command A to select all there, or you could just drag your mouse over it. And I'll call this class export. And then you'll want to choose to copy the audio files, and that way the audio files are contained there. Otherwise, if you don't, they'll stay here in the upper part of the project, which would be fine as well. And then we're not using any of the rest of these, so you can leave those unchecked. It doesn't matter. So if I hit save there and hit Command Tab over to the Finder, I can see there's now a folder. I'm going to hit this button up here to switch to this view. You've got different views in the Finder here. And then I can see under that class export folder, it has a Logic project, a folder full of audio files, and you can see these are the sample rate converted AIF files that came from the original MP3s. AIF is similar to WAV. And there's also freeze files, which we don't have any, and you don't have to worry about that. You just know that when you create a folder, there'll oftentimes be extra folders here. They'll also include a bounce folder. So if I bounce this again, hit B, let's just make an MP3 and choose class export 2. Now it's automatically in this bounce folder. And there's the MP3 that we just created. And then you've saved your project in Logic, and you have your exported files. If you created CD quality files, like these waves, you could drag those into iTunes and burn a CD from iTunes. I hope this was helpful. Have a good day.